Ladies and gentlemen, please can I welcome Rico, Mbali and Xolani, who will be speaking on basically what we've discussed in our different groups. And then we're just going to sum it all up. If you guys can just join me on stage, please. Take a seat. Oh, and Banana's joining us on stage, as you can see. Okay, thank you, guys. So we broke out into 5 groups. And, you know, I was walking around, and Rico, you'll agree with me, we were walking around and we were hearing such amazing stories. In actual fact, I think one of the groups that was in this room had a gentleman who was from Brasserie de Paris. If you can just show, is he still here? Did I hear anybody speak about Brasserie de Paris? He left, oh, unfortunately. Oh, I see. I actually grew up, that restaurant has been in Pretoria for a long time, and my parents like to dine quite a bit, and I grew up going there, so it was lovely to hear him speak and hear that he's here today. But moving on, can you guys tell me, what was interesting, what stood out to you in your discussion, Mbali?
Thank you so much, and it's such a privilege to be here with all of you guys today. Really, there was first and foremost not enough time because we had so much to talk about, and all very valid points actually. And it's also quite interesting to understand that as much as we're all in the same industry, but different pockets of the industry, we're all experiencing the same challenges. But sometimes it feels as if you're alone because we're all experiencing these challenges in silos. But what was interesting is that, you know, quite a lot of the topics had crossovers and some, you know, complexities in terms of themes, and one of the big challenges or maybe theme or discussion points was education in this industry. From the fact that we don't have, you know, enough education for our SOMs, etc., to actually distilling down, you know, absolutely we do need education from a technical perspective. We need the textbooks, but how do we distill that information into consumable bite-sized pieces for the normal everyday person?
100%. And Rico, would you like to add to what Mbali is talking about in terms of education?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, the education theme, I still think we need 3 more days. Because it is not necessarily the professional route or the formalized route. I think there's something to be asked around where are the sources of information, number one. And then secondly, how do you find a way to emotionally connect by educating? Now that needs a huge rethink as to how you would do it. But I think it's both. I think we need to make things easier to find a career, professionalize, and know that. And I do think, not that the industry body can do everything, but I think there is a cleanup to be done. And I think there could be a central source, point of entry, and so forth. But we can come back to the emotional part. That's been a golden thread through everything.
Yes.
Make the connection. And even when you look at margin, how do you make the emotion on the sale versus making the margin? Not always easy.
And it's also how you educate, depending on who you're educating. So if you're educating a professional in the wine space, that will look different to when you're educating a consumer, right? So some of the jargon that we use in the industry, does that really apply to somebody who is sitting in a township and wants to, you know, learn about wine? Or tasting notes. We spoke about some people from different backgrounds wouldn't understand what gooseberry notes, what is a gooseberry even. And I know Gray mentioned that it would relate or maybe taste like something different like soil or something about a soccer field, you know, if after the rain and this and that, and something that somebody else can actually relate to. And it also speaks to what Sip with Mimi was talking about, you know, in the way you communicate some of these things to certain, or rather to customers, should look a bit different to how you would to somebody who's a professional in the industry. Xolani?
So with our team, I think what we looked at, and also in the post-review, this education thing is spoken about quite a bit. But if we take a bit of a step back, one, we need to be honest with ourselves and accept that we come from a very fragmented history. Number two, understanding one of the points was a global palate and global taste. We need to park that and understand what is a local taste, considering irrespective of black, white, Indian, whatever, blue, purple, but culturally we are that diverse as a country. Then when we look at the practicality of it, is splitting this, call it the value chain or supply chain, into three. And I mean, this is just very top level. On the left is the producers. We'll park that and that Alsenberg and Stellenbosch and etc. From winemakers. We'll leave that there from an education and training point of view. What we're really looking at is the next two. Within the middle, you have three different tiers. You have on-trade, on-consumption. You have off-trade, off-consumption. And then you have a hybrid model, where the people are buying from directly from the farm or Discover Wine like Lorato's got, etc., dealing direct to the consumer. These two, from a training point of view, where the gap is, if anybody, and we're talking about going into, and I'll use Norman's as an example, a shelf packer is not trained on how to merchandise. There's no course for that, for example. When you're talking about waiters and on-trade, the problem that you have is one of the barriers to entry. There's price, but it's actually resources and access. If you're living in Khayelitsha, Gugulethu, Gwalanga, wherever it is within the Western Cape, even if you're living in Kayamandi, you don't have a car, you don't have a license. You need to take a taxi to Bellville if you're going from any of the outer townships to get from Bellville into Stellenbosch. And then in the hope and the example we use is that you take that same taxi and you get off, I don't know what that crossroad is, but on the left takes you to Hartenberg and Mooiplaas. On the right, you can go to Simonsa. So you need to choose. Am I going to go and learn about bubbly, walk the 20 minutes, and then when I'm done that 20 minutes, it's already 12 o'clock. I've tasted for an hour, 2 hours. It's now 3 o'clock. Hartenberg is getting close. So those are some of the challenges we have within training the guys. Another component from, we're parking, I'm not going to say much about WCT, Court of Masters, etc. We'll park that. Locally, even Cape Wine Academy, etc., we're going to put that one side. We spoke, David mentioned some courses that he does, which are non-accredited courses that we need. But also your real bigger thing is that as much as you have all of those courses, there is no course, and it was mentioned in the previous conversation, is that we are not training people to sell. We're so fixated on that, and the question we asked ourselves in our group, there is no answer yet. We need more time. But the bigger thing is that, do we need sommeliers in South Africa? One half said yes. The other half was more, actually we need the waiter to be able to give us the information from a food and beverage point of view at the same time, because we do communal dining. We're not European, where we want the starters, mains, dessert, the cheese course and all of that. When you're eating at home, whether you're Afrikaans, you're Xhosa's being the great woohoo, you are actually all eating together and more dining in a Japanese izakaya style dining. The very last part, the third part here, is you've got the consumer. This consumer interacts with all these three tiers. Therefore, we need to train these guys differently to be able to have the conversation here. If I am selling 4 cousins at a tavern in Soweto, wherever it happens to be, I need to be upskilled enough to have that conversation with a 4 cousins person who loves 4 cousins. Yep.
I must say, apart that one of the comments which I need to go and sleep on is we try and make things simpler, simplified, but the comment was, well, clothes is quite complex. Isn't there a fault in our thinking that we should not work so hard to fend off the complexity? There is some interesting variability in that. So I think that was quite a nice comment. And then the thinking around who is our first level ambassadors, and those are SOMs and waiters and others, and those we could equip. So yeah, perhaps be more specific in what are the points and what is frontline and what can we do to influence.
And I think quick one is to Rico's point. We've just been speaking about how we need to work collaboratively with influencers. Guys, our waiters and our SOMs are the influencers as well. So I think absolutely we do need to work with wine influencers, but I think we need to have a lens when we speak about SOMs and waiters in terms of there are influencers as well. They are our first touch point in terms of interacting with the consumer, the customer, and I say that because another quite pertinent topic that came up is, when we speak about how do you remember wine or what was the memorable moment, a lot of people said it was how it was presented to you at a restaurant.
Yes.
So that is very, very key, and I think we can't ignore that. And we need to really, really collaborate and equip our frontline guys to be able to influence in a collaborative way.
I love that. I love that. But I want us to zero in on the legacy piece, right? And obviously education is important here as well. But I want us to maybe shift it a little bit and really focus on where, how do we build, rather, how do we build wine culture where there's no legacy, wine legacy?
I can take a stab.
I'll go after you.
If you have a better answer, we can share. So to answer that, I think one of the things that came out in the roundtable is that the wine industry is 300 years old. The open wine market is 30 years old. When it comes to within the open market, I'll speak of people of color, there is no wine legacy, which is what we need to build. But you can't build anything if there's no emotional connection, if there's no sense of belonging. Is it a matter, and this is more of an open question, is that are the producers, as we're discussing today, making wine in a way that speaks to this new market? Because if we're not doing that and we're not being represented, and Grant is speaking about the smaller producers and being able to do that, I can tell you now, a lot of, guys, even within my social circle, no one really cares about Marzan, Ruzan, you name it. We're just looking, yes, we can educate, we can go there. But at the end of the day, it's still, I had a conversation with Koselo, I think, last week, and we're talking from a Riesling point of view. So we can go from 4 cousins, and we can start building from our taste profile, and that ability to have wine, and therefore our own wine culture, which becomes a legacy. With like Riesling, for example, we can have, sorry for South Africa, but we're talking about importing some Rieslings, but that's a sweet aspect in being able to enjoy other wines. So all of us here, really have a job to understand the consumer and not blanket approach and be like, here are all the white ones, here are all the Indian ones, here are all the black ones. Because then we're not going to get to them. Therefore, you won't have the emotional connection. There's no legacy or any story you'll be able to build with them, and we'll stick to beer.
Xolani, you mentioned that, in the black communities, we don't have a history of wine and we don't have the legacy. And why do you think that is, specifically? Do you think there's a reason? Do you think that there's a perception that wine was only for a certain class? Is maybe the idea of wine being a pairing, or rather, when you eat a certain dish, that's when you introduce wine to your meal?
Can I take that one, please? It's so convoluted, but I think, and we were speaking about this in the groups earlier, particularly for people of color, black people, our parents literally struck the fear of God in us if we ever thought or even looked at alcohol. So we come from 2 sides of the coin. There was never any in between. It's either you were church going and you did not drink, or you were that drunk uncle in the tavern every single day, coming home at 3 a.m. So there was no such thing as, what are you talking about balance, What are you talking about having wine with a meal? It was 2 extremes. And both extremes are detrimental to how we view and frame wine and alcohol. So that's the starting point, I think. And even with myself, I remember starting my career or my role, at Norman Goodfellows, and my mother actually literally sat me down with a very worried look on her face to say, do you have a support system at work? What happens if you become an alcoholic? So unfortunately, we have to deal with that first before we even begin to come into sort of the middle of the spectrum in terms of food pairings and growing up with wine and having just wine or a bottle of wine at the dinner table.
I'd actually like to hear from Rico on this one. What do you think of that?
Look, the notes I made is around, it was like a punch in the gut. So from where I sit, I think we do a pretty good story to tell what Michael said, the evolution of a sector. But I think we need to go and sit down, and there's the perception of a sector that's still not evolving, and then there's what I would call the reality. And I think it's actually something that's easy to fix, to continuously update and equip with information. So what is the status? And I don't want to even say DOP system, we're not there.
Yes.
But if I were to tell you that out of 900 winemakers, which were all men 10 years ago, there are 300 women now and 100 is black. at least we can have a discussion. If I talk to you about climate change or talk to you about responsibility on waste, there's so many pockets that I think we're not helping ourselves with. And then it starts with me. It starts with us. I think we're overly negative. I think we're overly critical. And I think, to me, it's not even a case of who should do it. Everybody should consistently tell that message. And obviously, it's a bit more complex. There are pockets and cultures, etc. But I think we're not doing our job to tell the story. And by not doing that, we get stuck on something that is easy to fix, in my view. And then the second point I want to make, which was quite profound, is, guys, we need to acknowledge that we've got two industries that coexist. We tend to talk about premium and bulk. I thought bulk is unpackaged wine. You've got two business models that coexist, and both are important, and we should almost look at the value of both, or the spectrum. Otherwise, we can shift blame.
Yes.
Just want to add something. I think when we talk about inclusivity, and we look at this industry, we're not learning from the other. On one of the slides earlier on, there was our competitors as wine, as gin, etc., and all the others. If you look at last week, there's a gin called Old Buck. I implore anybody and everybody to go onto LinkedIn and look at this video called Old Buck and see what the campaign is. Old Buck understood the brief, the mission very well. Their target market is not to sit on the shelf at Woolworths, etc. Their target market in December and June, sporadically during the year, but in December and June, you have a high uptake of alcohol sales for cultural ceremonies. Imikiti, weddings, you happen to name it. They have found a way to represent, not found a way, they've represented the cultural beauty aspect and that emotive moment around these experiences. And in the clip, what they also were able to do, which was quite smart, is I've grown up with Old Buck in these ceremonies. Okay? You have it as a shot, it works, it does what it needs to do. Never seen it as a tall drink. They are now seeding that into it, because if I'm already drinking Old Buck and that's what I can afford, and that's at bottom tier, we always think of the triangle here, but what's happened now is that the top tier, because whether you're the bottom tier or the top tier, you're going to have a ceremony, you're going to have after tears where someone's died, you're going to and. But they've understood it. Now, if we talk, I won't mention any wine brands, but if we talk from a wine brand point of view, we're not getting that message across.
Fantastic. I was actually speaking to Adi Badenhorst outside, and he usually hosts like it's called a scalp. Is it scalp? Scalp, yes. We just call it scorpo. That's that's a vernac way of saying it. And so I was just saying, geez, I need to come for one of those. And I asked him, what does he pair it with? Because he says he also includes afal and all of those things. And those are foods that are very popular in the townships. I mean, I grew up eating that food. I still eat it. I quite enjoy it. And I said, Adi, so what would you be pairing with that? And he started laughing at me. He said, we just drink. There's nothing you're going to pair with that, you know. But and I think if more people actually knew that there's a community in the Cape living like that, they would feel like it's a lot more inclusive. They wouldn't think, oh my gosh, I'm having afal right now, I can't have a glass of wine, right? Because it feels like there's a disconnection, but there actually isn't, because there's wine for any and every occasion. And we could even have, why not have wine called the Mkitis, you know? Anyway, so to move on, you just mentioned bulk wines, Rico, and you have your own perception of bulk. So funny enough, you said that, because I always think bulk is like box, you know. So, and then you think bulk, it's unbottled, and that makes a lot of sense as well, because I would imagine you thinking wine that's going to be sold to producers, right? So does fine wine need bulk, or does bulk need fine wine? Which one is it?
I think it's the point around the coexistence. It's neither one or the other. From where I sit, I find business models that are highly efficient and profitable in both. I think it's about how we collectively land the common narrative across brands. And somebody joked and said, look, we can use the side of a Namakwa box to put the messaging down. But in my view, what I want to say is I think there's a huge willingness to collaborate. And I think what we need to put together is, and I agree with Corinne, Gauteng is not an export market, my earlier slide, but it needs a dedicated focus in terms of the size of the pie and how we do it. And I think for a big industry that's fairly small, we can do it as a collective of all tiers. And so for me, it's really not the one or the other. I think we need to coexist and get away from talking down or talking up, talking down. Yeah, that's my point. I think it's both are essential.
It is, and I like that you said talking up and talking down. Mbali, anything to add on that?
Yeah, just for me, I echo what Rico is saying. I think also whether you're buying bulk or premium, I think the biggest thing is to, and I think we can all agree, is buy South African. You know, move away from the other categories and just buy South African wine. The more people that we can have drinking and enjoying wine, then the more stories that we can tell. The more stories we can tell, the more inclusive, number one, we can be and appear to be. And just demystifying those perceptions that are currently out there about, you know, being snobbish and being exclusive and elitism. So I do think, you know, whether it's boxed or bulk or premium, as long as it's wine, I think it really does reinvest or give back into the industry and will be better for it as well.
I think just going to the education part, from us as an industry, we are failing the guys working in it because we're not giving them the long-term view of what you can be and what you can do. A lot of the guys are doing the quick courses, whether it's level 2 or 3 WCT, whatever it is, to be able to get on the cruise ships and all of that. There's no career guidance in a way that you get into this, and upon being in this role and you've done that, this is the long-term part. We also need to hold the restaurants accountable, which is, can't remember, I don't know if it was Spencer who raised it. And the issue within the restaurants is the different wine lists. So if we have a cookie cutter wine list menus, which is, I can't mention because I think some of the big brands are here, but if we have a cookie, I won't be here for the tasting later. So if we can have a cookie cutter menu, and the question that I was posing is that if I'm a restaurant owner and I have the bigger guys giving me discounts, etc., and I've got a consumer who's still buying the wines and I'm making my margins, why should I change and diversify the wine menu? But if we don't do that, wine menu is diverse, sorry. Should have used another term. But if we're not doing that, then our biggest thing is that how do we grow the industry? And we need to be careful not to cannibalize each other. Therefore, we need to bring the restaurant owners into this conversation and for them to also walk the journey with us.
Amazing. For my last piece, rather the last topic that we discussed in the groups, I actually want to hand it over to all of you and give you an opportunity to speak on that or to ask questions, because I'm just aware of time and I don't want, you know, for us to finish without you guys engaging. But I want to ask everyone, are we selling what people understand? Who would like to? Yes, the gentleman at the back. Can you just say that again? Sorry.
I think we are not, and I'll focus on sweet wine specifically. A lot of people will go to Winex and ask, is the wine sweet? A lot of producers will go to Winex and get irritated by how many people are coming and asking, is the wine sweet? Has the industry thought, instead of making Sauvignon Blanc as my entry-level cash cow as an estate, let me make an off-dry semi-sweet wine to serve the market? But the consumer is telling you what I like, and we are saying, no, try this. On the other side, you get us who enjoy wine, enjoy good quality wine, but we've got a promiscuous palate. We want to try many different things, which makes us unsustainable for the producer.
I love that. Anybody else who wants to comment on that? Let's have somebody who hasn't spoken. Nico, I see your hand is up. I just want the lady here, you know, I'm just aware of time and then we'll bring it back.
Oh, I just had a question, sorry, jumping back. I'm a big one for inclusivity without diluting culture. And I think respect for traditions and different cultures, tribal, is the beautiful part about South Africa. So respecting it, understanding your consumer, understanding, which part of the cow or the sheep you can eat, understanding whether you can go and cut it and serve it yourself or wait to be served. How do we balance, because I know that came up quite a bit with we can't drink with our elders. How do we balance respecting traditions with, do you think that's ever going to change? And X, you spoke about drinking at cultural ceremonies. Is that just the elders? Or is that changing? Do you see it changing?
I'll answer, and then I'm sure Mbali is also going to add to it. I think the bigger difference is that we live alone. The beauty is that at home, so in the areas that we live, I mean, at my area, it's probably close to me, I've got a Checkers across the road, so Checkers 6060 is an option. And then within a 7-kilometer radius, there's a Woolworths on one side and Woolworths on one side. Just those are the only guys, and two Pick and Pays who give wine. So at home, we are having the consumption. When we go to the traditional ceremonies, we're having the consumptions out of our boots, hidden around the house. So it's not that we're not so it's not that we're not consuming now. We're still respectful. We have the disposable income to be able to spend on it. We just don't do it. And I mean, the time we spend with our parents is 2% now, 5%. But we have enough of and even if we see them for 50%, in that 50% we can drink 200%. Responsible drinking and all of that.
To add to X's point, I do see it changing. It's going to be a slow process, but I do see it changing purely because, X and my peers, we're just like you guys. We have wine responsibly, or we're having it at a braai, or we're having it with food. So any of our friends and their kids see us drinking responsibly. So, it won't be so taboo to be like, actually, let's go drink this bottle of wine quickly down by the garage. No, it's going to be like, oh, yeah, there's a bottle of wine in the fridge. And then it'll just be like seeing cheese in the fridge. So I do see it changing because we've got a different demographic who is consuming alcohol differently. And is also, I think, using a little bit more positive language associated with alcohol and not striking the fear of God in their kids.
I think there are lots of different market categories, and to say, are we getting to all the people in the right way is not right. I think there's many different categories. So for me, there is so much information. I like to go and look up the fact sheet. I want to know the alcohol percentage. I want to know the residual sugar. I want to know everything. Other people don't need that. With Sips with Mimi, her people don't want to know that stuff. They just want to know, what does she recommend when I'm going out for a dinner with a boyfriend or meeting the boyfriend's parents, and that's great. So for me, the work needs to be done in the entry level if we want to get more people drinking wine and getting them converted. But I think there's so much available for the other categories.
The gentleman in the black, I think you were next. Is there someone that side as well? Okay.
Hola. Damn, that's loud. Crazy. So I think mine's more a comment and less a question. But I think in all of the questions that have been, or all the conversation that's been interrogated today, has always been a one versus the other conversation, which I think is almost like taking us 10 steps backwards. I think the real question is how do we take these multiple facets and like collaborate them, and like how do we move forward with that? So I think again in our group, I think my biggest conclusion was the idea of like personal responsibility. So I think they should be, one, if you see a gap in the culture or a gap in inclusion, in what way, instead of you just pointing out the problem and putting your head down and waiting for the world to solve it, I think we can all just like figure out the problem, and then if in your own capacity, if you know how to fix it, and if you know people around you who may help you work the thing out, let's sit in communities, sit in groups, and not necessarily look at the idealistic white men at a table, but realize that there are multiple tables in this hall, and like not, instead of focusing on the one table that's most influential, figure out how all these tables now can come as a cooperative and kind of like move forward. So yeah, I think possibly if there's less conversation about one versus A versus B, but how do we make the alphabet make write a letter?
I love that.
Away.
I love that. Well said. We've got, I think, two more. There was a gentleman then we'll take one more. And then I'm just looking at time. And then we're going to have to close off.
So on my side, I mainly deal with the main market, right, which is the black consumers. And what I've noticed is that I'm from a spirits background, and now I've joined Norman Goodfellas, and I'm starting to see a different world. So a lot of people, when it comes to wine, they would say they want to sell it to my customers, but they're not willing to do the things that they're doing in Santin in my customers' area. So, for example, you find that, actually, let me stand up, sorry for that. You find that the spirit companies, they'll go and do an activation in a main market venue. A wine company can also do the same. It's not an expensive exercise. It's just about how you structure your deal. But a lot of them, they want my main customers, main market customers, to come to Santin to have a tasting. The wine tastings are exclusive. You get invited. Before I joined Norman Goodfellas, no one has ever said there's a wine tasting that we can go to. They don't come to us. But when it comes to spirits, I'll give an example. They go to these places on a quiet day, tell a customer or a restaurant owner, invite your top 15 consumers. They don't have to love wine, just for them to come and experience wine and how it is. So why is it that in the wine industry, it's not being done, and it's a way that it actually does help move your product into the right, I would say, throats in a respectful manner. But yeah, it's just one of the observations that I've had.
That is a good
recently.
point.
Yeah.
That is an excellent point. Our last one on the floor, please. I'm going to single out someone. Is Amos in the room? Yes, please. That gentleman, this guy, I met him many years ago at Quinrock, and you've done amazing as a som, and I know you're also in the spirit space, so we'd like to hear from you. You've been quiet.
So much pressure. Just to take it back to our group discussion, and I think one of the things we mentioned is, are we not perhaps asking the questions incorrectly? And one of the things, basically, to take it back to, I think it's point 3, or does fine wine need bulk, or does bulk need fine wine? And reason why I'm asking this question is we're so fixated on trying to push someone to drink or to basically to level up, and particularly in the current predicament that we are in terms of as an economy, is firstly, wine is the last thing that you're going to buy when you go or walk into a retail. So they already, and particularly in South Africa, we're very price conscious, and particularly when it comes to wine as well. So instead of trying to level people up, why don't leave them where they are? And I think Rico also mentioned is majority of the work needs to be done is at the bottom. Let's try and convert. Let's bring the spirit drinkers. Let's bring the beer drinkers over, so we can build so that we can have more wine drinkers, basically. So that's basically my question. And to take it back again is, with a lot of the questions that we've been asking, are we not perhaps asking them wrong? Instead of saying, should we change? Should we do this? Should we do that? Why? Because numbers are there, and numbers don't lie. And everything is, yes, it's working, but maybe just look at it a different perspective in terms of how we can build and make things better. Yeah.
Noted. Does anybody on the stage want to close off on what he said, or are we good?
We have a fruit salad up here.
Our fruit salad, yes.
No, I think, you know what, there's a little bit of thinking. We try and spot the gaps. There's a lot that we can work with, first point. Second point is we are some of the best storytellers. As South Africans, we are good with storytelling. And I think that my closure would be, somebody said, I didn't catch the full quote, it's Nelson Mandela quote, talk to a man in his language, it'll go to his heart. And I think it's almost like how do we do the deal on emotion and trade up?
I'm going to be very controversial. Safe space, switch the cameras off, please. and I'll read this because I wrote it earlier on. People of color, especially from the township rural areas, have always had to trade up. Trade up in the sense that you want to move from the township to an urban area. White South Africans, or you get what I'm saying, have never had to trade up because they've always lived in the urban area. So everything we do, so I agree with you, I'm also on the other spectrum, saying that everything we do within people of color context is a way to try and step up and trade up within your earnings and where you go in life, from starting at 4 cousins to eventually being able to enjoy, and whether it's an off-dry shed and blank or whatever it is. That is that context. That's why a person on the one side, I won't mention, I've got a dear friend of mine who's in this room, and I went to his house for a braai. I'll tell you the snippets I can remember. Afrikaans background, and we had Brandewyn and Coke. So having Brandewyn and Coke, if I grew up on it in the township, I would definitely only be having Hennessy on the rocks in the urban area. That's my context as a person of color.
Wow.
I think just my closing remarks, Lerato, is that we are all in it to win it. I think the most important thing for me is wherever you are within this industry, whatever you do, create a safe space. Because once you've created the safe space, does the person or do people become open to exploration? Open to, being fed your story, open to having a connection with you, just general openness. But that openness cannot be created if we are feeling some type of way or feeling intimidated. So safe spaces are quite important. And it's not necessarily about quantity of safe spaces, it's about quality, and making sure that they're meaningful.
I love that was your closing, because in my closing, I must say, the wine industry is a safe space for me. I work in a very, what's the word? I have to watch my words. But I work in a very hard and competitive, I'm the only female, not even the only female of color, but the only female in my team, in the deal-making team where I work. And I fight a different fight every day, and it's not the best environment. But when I can sit in a room with people like yourselves, people I respect, people I admire, people I look up to, it just gives me such great joy. And you're also welcoming, and you've made today very easy for me. It was my first time actually emceeing and moderating a wine panel and a wine discussion. So I am very honored that I got to do that, and I'm honored for your time. And, I know probably 90 or 85% of the people in this room, and I've met new people as well, and it just feels like the community is just growing for me, and I'm very grateful, and I'm very honored, and I'm sure Andrew is also very happy that everybody made their way. This was an amazing turnout. The engagements were amazing. The dialogue, there's a lot I have to go back home and think about myself. And like I said, we're giving you guys homework, because this is going to happen again. We are going to come back next year, and we're going to have, a discussion about what's changed, or what did we do differently, and what have we applied from what we discussed, what's worked and what hasn't worked. And ladies and gentlemen, with that, I'd like for you guys to give yourselves a round of applause for doing so well today. And with that, I would like to call Andrew up on stage, and he's going to do the final closing for us. I think we can just stay here while he does his thing. Andrew, please come up. And
hi.
Congratulations! Woo!
Good afternoon. Lorata's done most of what I'm going to do now. I'm not going to talk long at all. I'm just really here to say thank you. Thanks to all of you for being part of this, being part of the conversation. That's what we really wanted to do, and we believed in you, and you came, and you spoke, and you've clearly got so much more to say. So we will be back next year. We'll be back on the 1st of June next year. We're going to bring it earlier. August is a busy month, and September is a busy month for wine. So we're going to bring it earlier. And then I just wanted to say thank you to Lerato for leading us today. She's done an absolutely wonderful job, spectacular job in keeping us on track. And to all our speakers, we've had nearly 25 people, a bunch of people. You've seen them all, you know them all. I'm not going to list them all. But who I am going to list is our other supporters and sponsors. So News 24, Norman Goodfellows and Port to Port. The Gerard Bassett Foundation, I don't know if many of you know who that is. Go and research them if you don't. They sponsored a number of people to be here today because it was an expensive day, and we just wanted to make sure that there was a good representation in the room. Father Coffee for the coffee you had this morning, and the pastries, and the coffee that was in your goodie bags. Mountain Falls for the water. Topia Water, who's pouring water outside, freshly processed water for you to drink while in between glasses of gorgeous Swartland wine, of course. Mix 93.8 Radio, who's broadcasting from the foyer, if you didn't see them earlier. Meridian Wine Merchants, big supporter today. And then the lunches, the wines at lunch today was from Ex Animo, so thank you to them. Also still from the Swartland, of course. And then lastly, just to thank Gemma Steyer, standing at the back of the room.
Gemma! Woo!
A key member of our winelab.Africa team here in Johannesburg, and a key member of Wine Talk, and making this happen without her it definitely wouldn't have been possible. And the last person to thank is the person you probably have never seen, but you might have heard her name, some of you, Heloise Fourie. I don't know to say more. So. Thank you very much. Enjoy the wines outside. We'll see you next year. Oh, one more thing. We are going to be sharing a lot of the information we gathered in the groups on newsletters in the few months to come. So if you want all that, please subscribe to our newsletter, and we'll tell you more about next year's event. And we want your feedback. We want your criticism. We want your comments. We want to know what you want to talk about next year. So please let us know.
Amazing. And before everybody goes, sorry about that. One last thing. Please note that Norman Goodfellows vouchers do expire on 30 September. Mbali, and what else?
It's just a discount voucher in the goodie bags, courtesy of Norman Goodfellows and Port to Port. Guys, go shopping. They do expire on the 30th of September, 2025. So buy more wine.
And lastly, don't forget to grab a glass. The glass with the orange ribbon is the one you can take home. You can leave the empty glasses on the table. That's for the tasting. Thank you very much, and good night.